So I'm in full Jack Cheek Dungeon Mistress Dungeons of Doom tonight. Jack, you never return my calls. Love you, babe. Hi. So we were talking about the aesthetic of role-playing games, immersion in the narrative, but also in the case of Dungeons and Dragons retroclones, that is, games that are trying to recreate the feel and the world of old Dungeons and Dragons. We're also looking at new rules design that simplifies play and makes it more accessible to modern players, obviously, but also makes that gaming experience better. So advanced D&D is what we're moving into today. So Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out. Gary Gygax and co had written large volumes. There was a player's manual, a monster manual, and the Dungeon Master's manual. Player's manual gave you lots of new character classes and stuff that are now the absolute core of Dungeons and Dragons. So not just fighters, clerics, magic users. It also had illusionists, it had thieves, it had monks, it had paladins, druids, rangers, these kinds of things. And of course this is built up with other character classes which have become absolutely part of the beloved canon. The Monster Manual, my favourite book of all time, was filled with all the beautiful monsters that you needed. It had gorgons, it had orcs, it had elves, it had wandering berserkers, zombies, skeletons, lovely. And then came this huge Dungeon Master's Manual, which had reams of material, much of it kind of advice on how to run a game, some of it very useful, random charts for generating dungeons and so on. Most usefully inside that volume were treasures. All the magic items and so on, many of which again have become a core of that Dungeons and Dragons geist. Everything from Vorpal swords to wands of frost, this is where they came from. So, in the modern era, as new versions of Dungeons and Dragons came out, the old game was missed, but the old game had its faults. Open licensing allowed people to essentially try and recreate that game and republish it. Some of them improved upon it, and I think there's a couple that are Rolls Royces of that. The very, very best re-imaging of original Dungeons and Dragons, but with a smoother, better system that I have found, and I've read them all. Castles and Crusades. Castles and Crusades, this is brought out by Trolllord Games. You'll find them online, trolllordgames.com. You can also, of course, find this stuff on drive-thru, but these volumes are magnificent. They followed a similar format, so we have a player's handbook, and then we have they've done a Monsters and Treasures book, and then they've done a Castle Keeper's Guide. These are their basics, and there are many others. So Classic Monsters, highly recommended. This is a book that fills out tons more monsters. They also have some setting books, so they've done some things if you wanted to set your game in ancient Egypt or ancient Greece, but they've also done things like ancient Germanic, and they've got these Celtic setting books and so on. It's got the gods, and it's got the monsters, and it's got the ethos and special character classes and so on. But the thing about these rules is, Dungeons and Dragons, as we discussed, there was a D20 mechanic which was used for rolling to hit in combat. There was a D20 mechanic that was used for saving throws. There was a percentile system that was used for thieving skills and so on. For some reason you rolled 2d6 on different charts to try and figure out if you could turn undead. There were a lot of different systems to learn there, and it was somewhat haywire. So what Castles and Crusades did is they've made a single unified system, and it's very, very good. D20 based, they call it the Siege Engine, which is rather sweet. And what they do is, when you design a character, you've got the usual expected Dungeons and Dragons characteristics: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. There they are. What you do is, to create a character, you can highlight some of those characteristics. They're going to be ones that you favour. you'll get one of those which is chosen specific to your career. So let us say you wanted to be a rogue, a thief. They say that the compulsory one you must tick is you favour your dexterity because you do a lot of agility based things. Then it's up to you to tick another one. So you could say, I might favour my charisma. I might be a charismatic thief, Riley Ace of Spies. Or when you have a look at things, what are other things based on? Well, intelligence is very, very useful for spotting traps. Wisdom, on the other hand, is very, very useful for initiative and a lot of other skills. So you can decide what kind of character you're going to be. And the same goes for fighters and so on. You'll get one that's going to be, you're going to have to tick your constitution as a fighter, which is a useful thing, it helps you withstand a lot of attacks. But you might decide, I might be a highly charismatic fighter, I shall be a swashbuckling sort. Or you could be a highly intelligent fighter. Nice. Humans get to tick an extra favoured characteristic. The non-human characters instead get a slew of extra abilities. So dwarves, for instance, they only tick those 2 boxes, but what they do is they have a series of save and throw bonuses, and they can see well in the dark, and they get this slew of things that we're used to thinking of, in the game terms. And so very nice and very quick and very easy. But this core mechanism goes through everything. So saving throws in the game are a characteristic check against the characteristic. Characteristics that are not favoured, you have to roll an 18 or higher on a d20 to pass a basic check. You add your level to the roll. Favoured characteristics, it's a 12 or higher. So our thief, who has a favoured dexterity, if an arrow trap goes off, it will say you must do a dexterity saving throw to dodge out of the way of the arrow trap. He has a favoured characteristic. Let's say he's a 2nd level thief. He's got to roll a 12 or higher. He gets +2 to his dice because he's a 2nd level thief. So effectively he's rolling a 10 or higher. You also get characteristic bonuses for the characteristics themselves in the traditional way. Armour class is done in an ascending style, much like 3rd edition and later editions of the game, which modern players find quite easy to access. But skills and so on work off this same saving throw system. Now, the core game tells you that it's not really being specific about skills. You can decide from your skills from a background for the character. If your guy is a pirate or you're a mighty seafarer, we presume that you know seafaring stuff. If you are from the woods, if you are urban, if you are a noble, you can generally presume people have appropriate skills to that background. They're trying to encourage this idea of just go for it, because having highly delineated skills almost limits the game. They do then have some expansions and suggestions if you want highly delineated skills. Personally, I would not suggest it. I like the Geist of go for it. So your combat roll, your skill rolls, your saving rolls, everything is done on this one system that you can just teach. Boom. As you go up in levels, I've got a little chart that shows, you get bonuses to hit and so on, as we're used to for everything. Some other very nice things about this game. They made a white box edition, which is of course based on the original brown box D&D. What I love about this is it's in the same format, so we've got Player's Handbooks and Monsters and Treasures. It's a 3-book format, but they have everything you need to play a role-playing game in them. All the monsters, all the character classes, treasures, the works. But look at the size of them. This is perfect for just literally sliding into your shoulder bag when you go to a convention, and you've got a game on you. You've got all the reference that you'll ever need. So I really do think this is the perfect Dungeons and Dragons reimagining. Crisp, simple. There's some beautiful artwork all through it. They maintain this one artist, Peter Bradley. He has a very beautiful, very soft style that he uses. We'll do some close-ups on that. But they're consistent. It's got a lovely old world feel to it. They do not snow you down on these books, filling out things with massive, massive colour artwork and white space. Thank you very much, guys. It's got all the spells that you would recognise it's got all of the monsters, but they're often cleaned up. There were some blank areas or poorly explained areas in original Dungeons and Dragons, or stuff that just made things too deadly, or they didn't make sense. Rationalised, cleaned up, beautifully done. It's rather cute that they've had to rename some of the monsters, because some of the monsters were trademarked. You cannot, for instance, have a game that's got a beholder in it. That is trademarked to Wizards of the Coast now. So instead they've got like the eye monster. We know what it is, we see what it does, but I like their versions of the monsters. They've done some really good cleanup. With all of this said, they've done some adventures and setting books. Some of those are quite straightforward and very simple adventures. A lot of the setting books have their own world called Airdrie. A lot of those are great. There's maps, there's specific monsters and treasures to that setting. Highly recommended as a games world. They brought out a Gods book. I would not recommend that, because it was made with a genial misunderstanding of what total bastards some players are. You can skim through this book, and the lovely idea they had was that if you're a follower of different gods, and if you're a priest of different gods, you should get some different bonuses and abilities, and this is nice. But you can cherry pick, and you can find some stuff that gives you some pretty hefty advantages. Leaving you wonder, well, why does anyone bother with this god when you could have this guy? You know, literally, some of them give you big bonuses to hit, extra magic spell slots, all these kinds of things, whereas others give you like a piece of cheese every third Thursday in the month, or, you know, I get a +1 whenever I use a short spear. Yeah, that's not going to fly. But they do have some excellent adventures. Ooh, they have of course they have one particular adventure, Town of Calais, written by me. I did the city book that I always wanted. I loved City State of the Invincible Overlord as a kid. So shameless plug here, this is the city that I always wanted to play in, because my thing with City State of the Invincible Overlord was that all of the locations were really just 2 or 3 lines. You know, this is a blacksmith shop, there are 52 copper pieces hidden under the anvil. This one, my idea was every single location is an adventure. There's something there for everyone. So these guys do have some good published material, and I would absolutely recommend, if you want to play old school Dungeons and Dragons, but with very clear, very easy, 100% understandable rules, with a mechanic that you can teach to people in 10 seconds flat, but with all the depth and all the fun of old style D&D, Castles on Crusades, Troll Lord Games, absolutely 5-star. Do get it. I think you'll be absolutely thrilled by it.